7 years back, you guys were at
6,000
crore, and fast forward to today, 1.3 lakh
1.3
crore.
lakh crores.
So that's 20x.
Yeah,
growth.
20x and profitable growth.
How much percent of your money was in Shark Tank investment? Around 6,000, 7,000 stocks in the Indian stock market, but there are 4,000 mutual funds. How do you actually know what are the types of mutual funds that you need, and how do you actually pick the mutual fund?
Real estate is going to revive in a big way. 20 years ago, if someone built a new house, did they care how their bathroom looked?
No.
Today, people spend the most amount of money on bathrooms.
Yeah.
So this is all part of India is going to premiumize in a big way.
Yeah.
And only 3% of India is in absolute poverty.
People like me started talking about finance on social media. The media came up with this very fancy new term called finfluence.
Listen, finfluencers spotted an opportunity to be out there on social media, and if you think there's a problem with the content on social media, well, don't whine about it. Go out and create better content. These are diamonds. These are not investments. Because I'm not going to sell them. This is my wedding ring. I'm not going to sell it. This is not an investment. Now, why shouldn't you otherwise sell that house and put it into the Nifty? Oh, मैं आपको financial मैं argument ही नहीं करना चाहता.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Club Show, where we talk about the financial and the career journeys of the top 1% of this country. On today's episode, we don't have somebody from the top 1%. We have somebody from the top 1% of the 1% of this country. She is someone who needs no introduction. She is the CEO of Edelweiss Mutual Funds. Her company manages more than 1.3 lakh crores of Indians' hardworking money. And she's also a shark on Shark Tank. It is such a pleasure having you on the show, Mrs. Radhika Gupta.
Thank you very much. And it's very good to talk to you and all the people who love and watch you.
7 years back, you guys were at
6,000
crore, and fast forward to today, 1.3 lakh crore.
1.3 lakh crores.
So that's 20x.
Yeah,
growth.
20x and profitable growth.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how much percent of your money was in Shark Tank investments?
Well, the investments are now happening because diligence is finishing, but I think less than 10% total will be in alternatives. Yeah. See, with mutual fund CEOs, I don't think people get this. We have rules that require that 20% of our post-tax income automatically goes in our funds.
Yeah.
Before it hits my bank account.
Yeah.
Then a lot of other income goes in funds. But Shark Tank will be less than 10%.
Got it.
And look, I've only done a season and a short part of the season. Let's see how this evolves.
My goal is to talk to every mutual fund CEO, and it is high time that the mutual fund CEOs of this country who is managing the country's wealth need to be out there and talking about, how they are managing the money so that more financial literacy can be spread. But I think the audience would love to know, how do you personally manage your own money?
It's interesting. Till I did Shark Tank, I did not have a single stock. I've never owned a stock in my life outside Edelweiss, which is a result of ESOP. I never owned a stock. I've only owned funds. And it's worked really well for me. And even now with Shark Tank, I always say, if I was only there to make money, I would buy mid and small cap funds. I would not do Shark Tank India because the easiest way to manage money is really that. So for a large part, my investments have been in mutual funds and balanced funds. So blended equity and debt products, and some long-term SIPs in mid and small cap funds. I've recently made my investments a tad more aggressive and more equity oriented because we've paid out a large chunk of our home loan. Obviously we're far more financially settled 10 years in. But they've been very personal. So I always say the person comes before the finance. So they've been very focused on the needs of the person. I give a lot of time before exiting funds. So a lot of my investments are Edelweiss Mutual Fund. I have some external investments, but I rarely churn my portfolio. So I will do a major rebalance in my portfolio once in 5 years.
Got it. So now let's move on to another controversial topic. Right? So there is something that you'd written on Twitter, I think about a year back, about the rent versus buy debate.
Yeah.
You mentioned money exists to fulfill goals and not to win a race of returns.
Yeah.
Stock returns don't match the smiles of owning your home. Now, I am of a contrarian opinion because I feel like the real estate industry of India is very overvalued compared to any other country on the planet. When you look at the GDP per capita of an Indian, it's very overvalued. And most people in their late 20s or early 30s think of getting a home, and it ends up becoming 90% of their portfolio, right? So what would you say to me to convince me otherwise to not? Because I still don't own a house, I still rent.
Honestly, if I had to give you a financial argument to buy a home, I have no financial argument. That is what I would say to you. It is an emotional argument.
Yeah.
Home buying as a primary home is just an emotional argument. Honestly, the financial math rarely makes sense because the rental yield on a home today is significantly less than even interest rates. So वो मैं आपको financial मैं argument ही नहीं करना चाहती.
Yeah.
But आप emotion से नहीं argue कर सकते.
Yeah.
So the reason I bought a home is I wanted my son to grow up in a home. I didn't want to shift every 5 years. By the way, I don't own a second piece of real estate, and I don't intend to own a second piece of real estate because I like liquid investments.
Yeah.
And a primary home, in my view, is not an investment. It's a home. It's
Yeah.
like I always say, these are diamonds, these are not investments. Because I'm not going to sell them. This is my wedding ring. I'm not going to sell it. This is not an investment, yeah. And I always tell women, don't call this an investment.
That's a big ring.
It's now I mean, so this is not an investment. This is a gift from my husband when we got married. So these are emotional things.
Yeah.
You can't argue with emotions. And I am not going to buy a second piece of real estate.
I think for me also, it's easier to say that because my parents have their own home.
Exactly.
And I grew up in that house, right?
Now, if you didn't, like me
and I would never sell that house.
There you go.
Right?
Now, why shouldn't you? Otherwise, sell that house and put it into the Nifty. That's what I'll tell you. Achha,
Exactly.
if you think so, please sell that house and put it into the Nifty. You will never sell that
I'll
house.
never do that. Yeah, I think that's the thing. If you already have one primary home residence, then you don't need another.
Like
house.
we didn't have a primary home. Me and my husband, my parents live in Delhi. His parents, we live in a nuclear family. So we didn't have a primary home. We needed a primary home to grow up as a family. And that's it.
So, because we are saying, okay, let's put most of the money in mutual funds, and that is what I personally do as well. Now, the question arises is, even picking mutual funds is not that easy, right? Because there are 4,000 mutual
There
funds.
are lots of them, yeah.
There were around 6,000, 7,000 stocks in the Indian stock market, but there are 4,000 mutual funds. So, how do you actually know what are the types of mutual funds that you need, and how do you actually pick the mutual funds specific for your needs?
You need actually 4-5 categories of funds. The rest is excess. It's like, there may be 100 types of cuisines in the world, but actually people eat 4-5 types. So you need to find 4-5 reasonable categories of funds. I mean, that's the way I think about it with my own money. You need a fund that gives you broad-based market exposure. अब आप उसको large cap कह लो, अब आप उसको multi cap कह लो. You need one fund that does that. You need some fund that gives you exposure to smaller companies, really growth companies. Now you call it mid or small cap. So these are usually the options.
Yeah.
If you are conservative, you would like a conservative product, one balanced product. Okay. You need a place to park your contingency money, your short-term money. That's it. And in each category, you pick 2 AMCs. Okay. Why do you pick 2 AMCs in each category? Because different fund managers have different investment styles. Different investment styles do well at different market points. And
So
you
let's
don't.
say, for example, I need a mid-cap fund.
Yeah.
Now there are, let's say, around 10 different mid-cap fund category, 10 different mid-cap fund houses.
Yeah.
Now, out of those 10, you're saying pick 2.
Yeah.
Now, how do I pick those 2?
So I would look at a few things. One is, and I'm biased because I'm a money manager, but I try to draw comfort from the asset management company. I try to see what they stand for. Finally, I'm handing over my money to someone. So what are the kind of companies a fund house is picking in that particular mid-cap fund? When is that fund likely to do well? When is that fund likely to do badly? The second is also equally important. And then I would look at the...
How do you study all these things? But
So by the way, mutual funds put out so much information that nobody reads.
Yeah.
Sharan, it breaks my heart. If you go to our website, we have a product page for each fund. A lot of RMC websites are very rich.
yeah,
Very, very rich.
nobody likes to read anymore.
And nobody likes to read. Unfortunately, what people go do, and if there's one thing people take away, don't go to a random website XYZ, sort mid-cap funds by best performing 1 year
That's
return.
what most people do.
And it is the worst thing you're doing for your money because that last 1 year return is the return of the person who invested last, in March. What is that? How
Have
is
to
that
do
going
with
to
your
determine
returns. Yeah.
your return in the next 1 year? Anyway,
Yeah.
you should not be investing for the next 1 year. So long-term performance is important. And for equities, I mean 5-year performance, nothing less than that. And on our website, and I know a couple of other AMCs do this, we publish something called rolling return.
Yes.
Rolling return क्या होता है? It is if over 5 years, I've had 1 lakh investors. What is the average return of any investor who stayed with me for 5 years? for you coming into my fund, this is probably more useful than the return of the investor who joined last February or March.
Absolutely.
So please check 5-year rolling returns. You want to
Yeah.
check one statistic, 5-year rolling returns. You have the experience of investors who came in at different points and the fund's ability
Yeah.
to manage money across market cycles, across different points.
Yes.
Versus point to point is literally just one data point.
The reason for that is because the media only publishes that.
And
right?
it's terrible. And
Yeah.
I've been arguing about this and arguing about this. So,
Yeah. Some people also keep changing their funds based on what they see in those articles.
Sharan, I've been in the industry for 7 years and I have seen in this period 7 asset management companies who were what I call this hype that, because their returns were top of that list.
Yeah.
I've seen at least 7 cases and investors rushing to put in money in that best performing fund, and then the cycle changes, the market changes, and that whole thing turns around.
So one is looking at the past data, which says more about the fund's investment capabilities.
Yeah.
But what will happen in the future, even the past data cannot really say
No,
anything, right?
it can't.
And that really depends on what is that fund manager or the mutual fund house's bet on how the Indian economy is going to shape and which industry they're more bullish on, right?
And by the way, that will also change because the reality is you're investing for 5 years. So
Yeah.
even today, that's why I think understanding the thinking and style of the fund manager is far more important, because today I could be bullish on capital goods.
Yeah.
But you're not investing for me today.
Yeah.
You're investing for me over
Yeah.
5 years.
So that's
right?
what I wanted to ask you. At Edelweiss, in the equity segment, what industries are you guys more bullish towards and why?
Okay. Today, India is the 5th largest economy.
Yeah.
We have a shot at seriously becoming number 3 over the next few years. And if you look at any economy, including the US, when there is an increase in economic size, the impact on market cap is disproportionate. So I think that is what is going to happen. And there are a few, I would attribute it to 3 reasons. One is that demographics of India is at a very sweet spot, and you can see past track record. $2,500 per capita GDP to $5,000 per capita GDP is when basic needs of a nation are over. And at every level of society, there is an economic uplift. And that you're seeing happening. You went from 17% Indians having bank accounts 10 years ago to 80% Indians. So that's
Yeah.
bottom of the pyramid. Top of the pyramid in this country, you're seeing hotel rates are crossing rates in London and New York. So
Yeah.
consumption is going to explode. I think demographics are incredible. And 70% of your population is young people, including many who are watching this,
Yeah.
who will consume, save, invest. The second is, today we are a capital sufficient nation. Our biggest problem in 1947 was we were food insufficient. In Green Revolution, we became food sufficient. At some point in this country, if you wanted to start a business, your biggest problem was you didn't have capital. Today, whether you want to put up a greenfield power project at the highest end of the economy, don't worry, or if you want to start a startup on Shark Tank, there is capital.
Yeah.
And third is, I think policy is supporting demographics and this power of entrepreneurship. And that could be building out of infrastructure. That could be digital infrastructure, which has enabled so many people like you.
Yeah.
And that could be things like PLI, etc., which are enabling manufacturing. So one of the sectors when India is going to see a major boom is the whole manufacturing side of the economy, because the investment cycle has kicked in. And it could be things like capital goods, it could be things like consumer durables, it could be things like electronic manufacturing services. So the outsourcing of electronic manufacturing, and companies that fund this side of the economy also. So financial services companies that
Yeah.
fund this side of the economy. Real estate is going to revive in a big way. And that doesn't just mean real estate stocks. I'll give you a simple example. 20 years ago, if someone built a new house, did they care how their bathroom looked?
No.
Today, people spend the most amount of money on bathrooms.
Yeah.
So this is all part of home building as a theme. India is going to premiumize in a big way.
Yeah.
And today in most sectors, we are unbranded, or you have very, very few brands. So you'll have lots of brands being created. I think organized men's fashion is a great example. And many, many premium brands will emerge because of this $2,500 to $5,000 migration that we're going
Of GDP per capita.
of GDP per capita.
So you're saying that once the GDP per capita of a country crosses that $5,000 mark, lot more people will be very sufficient in terms of their basic needs, and that is when consumption can really skyrocket because the disposable income increases, and that's when
And
the
that's what's
economy
happening.
booms.
If you look at India, we are 1.4 billion people. The top, and about less than a $4 trillion economy. If you look
Yeah.
at the top 10% of India today, we account for half the economy. That's 12 crore people. So 10% of people account for half of India's economic size. That means their per capita GDP is $12,000-13,000.
Okay.
That is a big number. That's China type. So that is an
Yeah.
upper middle income country. And 12 crore people in absolute is a very large number of people.
Yeah.
Right? By the way, if you look at the top 10% of that top 10%, which is
1.2,
1%, your 1%,
Yeah.
that is a very rich population and it's a very big population, which is why when people are surprised that Bulgari launches a 12 lakh bracelet for Indian men and it sells because you have 1 crore really rich people and 12 crore
Yeah.
upper middle income people.
Yeah. Around 1 crore people have filed income tax more than 10 lakhs last year. And about 8 or 9 lakh people in India are millionaires. When I
Yeah.
mean millionaires, the dollar millionaires, so they have 8 crore net worth. And around 20 or 30,000 people are ultra HNIs,
Yeah.
meaning they have more than $30 million, which is around 250 crores. And around 200 billionaires in the country.
Yeah,
Right.
so there you
So
go.
as it goes higher and higher, the 0.1% club, they are controlling more and more wealth. And they are really, really driving a lot of these luxury brands coming into the country.
Today we have there was a stat that came out that about only 3% of India is in absolute poverty. Rich India, the size of rich India is going to double in the next 6-7 years. So I keep telling people, what if I told you, you and me, that we are living in a rich country, in a rich country that's going to double in 6-7 years? What if I told you you're sitting in Germany and it's going to double in 6-7 years?
So you're saying that India has a lot of these rich pockets, and those rich pockets are going to get bigger and bigger.
You can't think of India as a single country. India is not, you can't think of India in averages.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So now let's get to which is the whole finfluencer topic that's happening in the country today.
Okay.
I was the reason the word finfluencer word was coined. Not many people know it because when people like me started talking about finance on social media, they didn't really know what to call me, right? Because usually finance information is consumed on newspapers, or on articles. But when somebody started talking about it on Instagram through, finance skits, the media came up with this very fancy new term called finfluencer.
Nice word, finfluencer.
Right? And at that point of time, it was a very celebrated word. The young youth of this country is talking about finance. And I was somebody who didn't even have a finance background. Most people assume that I have a CA or a CFA background. I was a mechanical engineer. 1 or 2 years later, looking at this opportunity of social media, a lot of people started, giving stock tips and trading advices, called people to Telegram channels, and we're giving these stock tips in return for a subscription fee, which is against the rule of SEBI.
Yeah.
And because of that, the whole tide changed. That the media then said, finfluencers are bad, this, and I happen to be the poster boy, right? So just wanted to get your opinion of what do you think of finfluencers. And
Listen, finfluencers spotted an opportunity to be out there on social media, and you can criticize, you can say X, Y, Z, but there's also something to learn, that there is an opportunity. So please, if you think there's a problem with the content on social media, well, don't whine about it. Go out and create better content that can be out there on social media. But look, I want to say I have a very balanced view on this. I have no problem with social media. In fact, I respect people who are talking about finance on social media, because the fact is that if you look at even the new investors coming to mutual funds, half of them are Gen Z and millennial, and they spend a lot of time on social media. So if that is where the consumer is, someone needs to be talking to the consumer. These are good things, by the way. I have 2 areas of concern. One is the kind of content, and sensational content is a little scary, especially content around a lot of this F&O and get rich in 65 days, because financial literacy is low in India. It is improving. And, money is not like selling this mug, right?
Yeah.
We are influencing something that Indians work very hard for. So when you're in that position of influence, I think you have to be responsible. And I keep telling viewers that if someone's just telling you, all good, it's a little questionable. The second challenge I have, which I think is not a challenge, but it needs to be disclosed, is when you're taking advice from someone online, what are their incentives to give you that advice? So today, when a mutual fund distributor is working with you, the commission, everything is disclosed. And SEBI always says we've operated on a disclosure-based regime.
Yeah.
As long as incentives are disclosed and the person is an aware listener, that's good. So these are my two challenges. But fundamentally, I have no problem with social media.
One thing I've wanted to mention that, a lot of people have been saying that, influencers should get registered and, get their own qualifications and all of that. It's actually quite hard because I personally went through that journey.
Yeah.
And I've not really announced it anywhere. But just last week, we got our SEBI registration as well.
Very good.
Right. And we are now, the company that I run, the 1% Club, we now have the RIA license.
Very good.
Right. And it took us a lot of time and effort
But
to build that
I'm
practice.
happy that you're going down that journey, because there's a broader point here is that the reality of financial services is a regulated business. This is the way. And whether you are a startup, whether you are a fintech, or whether you are an asset management company, you have to respect and embrace regulation. So I have not always been part of a large asset management company. I ran a small business myself.
Yeah.
And I know the challenges in getting regulated. We were 24 when we started Forefront. But one of the decisions we made very early at that time is whatever we're going to do is going to be highly regulated. And cost of compliance is not cheap. Doing the paperwork is hard. So I empathize with all of that. But I really think it helps you build for the long term.
Two last questions. Can you list out some financial mistakes of your life?
Oh, my life?
Yeah.
Not paying attention to asset allocation very early in my career. Just smart goal-based planning, not having a contingency fund, and too much asset allocation towards equities has been a mistake.
That's a good point before you move on to the next mistake, that a lot of people think of investing as this big pot of money, which I just need to make it grow. And they're very comfortable putting 100% in equity when they're young. Right? But the right way to look at it is looking at your financial goals.
Yeah.
What is that money meant for? So your line which you says money exists to fulfill goals, right? So if it's meant to buy a car 2 years from now, if it's meant for a vacation next year, if it's meant
not
for,
going in equity then.
Yeah. If it meant for a house 5 years from now, depending on that, you need to invest. And that
I
is
met
the
a
right
woman
way of
at a
investing.
session and she's like, tell me how to make a lot of money without taking a lot of risk in a very short period of time. This was 2 days ago. I said, I have no answer. Sometimes concentration in portfolios, letting one thing, whether it is your ESOPs, for instance, or stock value, any one investment dominate a part of your portfolio.
Got it. And last question, I don't know which one to ask. There's one, you have two options. One is something about life. One is something about billionaire. Which one do you want?
I think I'll take life.
Life, okay. Yeah. What do you think is the meaning of life?
To find happiness. Just genuinely to find meaning of life is to find a sense of happiness and purpose.
So I think finding that purpose which eventually gives you that meaning and happiness in your life.
Because purpose gives you anchoring. Otherwise, you're always in a race. And
life
is a limited innings game. So you can't be in a race. You have to stop being in a race and find a sense of purpose. When purpose gives you happiness.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you so much, Mrs. Radhika Gupta, for giving us your precious time. I personally learned a lot. I hope this was very finance heavy for you.
I know, this is the most finance heavy content I've done in a long time. So thank you.
Yeah, that's my job, to make the finance heavy content simple and understanding for the millions of audience. All right, guys, that's the end of it. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.